Where are you living nowadays?
I live in London.
You're still living in...
I've always lived in London, yeah.
What's your feeling about the differences in culture? You've really made a point of experiencing a wide range of cultures.
I mean, I've been here backwards and forwards between London and LA a lot. Not so much to New York, because New York I find I can't really handle anymore. But the main difference in culture, I think, is that people are incredibly competitive over here. That's what the culture seems to be based around in terms of social culture. Everything is about... on one hand, it's bad because everything is about who you are and what you've got. And if you don't actually have an awful lot of status, either financially or in terms of celebrity, then you're not much over here. On the other hand, I find it when I go back to England, it depresses me how little. It's not just a matter of ambition in England. In England, people don't aspire to anything because they feel that they're onto a loser from the beginning.
There's a hopelessness.
That's something which I find really difficult to deal with, because I've always, right from the beginning, even like the first record, Wham Rap, was supposed to be a kind of tongue-in-cheek poke at getting people to get off their arses, and not be intimidated by the fact that the media was pumping everybody full of unemployment,
Well, what do you think endows you with that spirit of hope?
Well, it's very easy for me because I'm one of the lucky ones anyway. I'm lucky in that I have an ability which gives me a springboard, or which gave me a springboard to work towards those aspirations from. But I don't know, I'm just quite an optimistic character. In terms of, personally, I'm a very optimistic character. At the same time, I think I'm quite fatalist, really. When you come to the larger issues, I'm not very hopeful in that respect. But personally, I've always had a real optimism, And I think I really believe in people. I believe, although en masse it seems to be kind of counterproductive, I do believe in individuals working towards their absolute full potential,
Well, with some of your social views, does that put you at odds? To have a welfare state and then at the same time to believe in working at full potential. A lot of people argue that to have any kind of a welfare situation or a socialist situation...
I think a welfare state is absolutely necessary. I think it's disgusting the way ours is being chipped away from at home to resemble the one here, because I think the welfare state here is totally inadequate,
One argument, which I tend to agree with, is that the welfare, just because people should work to their full potential, you can't discard people that can't.
Exactly, yeah. Well, there's a whole... Actually, one of the songs on the album, although I don't really... it's the first thing I've done that's even vaguely political. Normally I deal in... I believe in dealing in personal politics without involving, governmental issues, but simply because so many other people do it. And because other people do it a lot better than I probably could. But there's one track on the album which is actually directly about the way our country is leaning towards... Obviously the basis for it is because our government thinks that it's protecting itself by doing this, but the way our country is leaning towards American values in terms of welfare and in terms of the individual and the individual's responsibility, and it's just a comment on how vicious it is. The way that's happening is very wrong, I think, and it scares me a lot, because I think it's all very well to try and apply American values to a country in our state, but I think it's the wrong thing to do, because it leaves such a huge number of people who can't fend for themselves with no choice,
Do you ever feel guilty in having made a lot of money in regard to your political?
I've never felt guilty about that. I've always felt... well, you have certain moments of... I have moments of conscience, but at the same time I try and clear my own conscience with some of the things I do with my money. But but in terms of actually becoming wealthy, if it had been my specific aim to become wealthy, and I was an entrepreneur in that sense, then maybe it would be hard to ally any kind of even moderate political views to that. But I've always said that I don't think becoming wealthy or being wealthy is not a right-wing act in itself. You know,
Acquiring wealth as a result of talent is not something you can sort of like castigate yourself for.
well, it's a very unusual situation to be anyway. To be I mean, you know, the rock industry or the media is one of the few areas in which a young person become very wealthy very quickly, and without having to make the type of decisions which immediately put a person into a right-wing bracket, because there are an awful lot of decisions that have to be made, business decisions that are made by entrepreneurial types, which are very obviously to other people's disadvantage, should we say. But there are certain situations where you see that young people who want to make money have to walk on each other, and if you're lucky enough that your ability or your particular talent is something which other people are very eager to make money out of, and which makes you very rich at the same time, then you can kind of turn a blind eye for an awful long time. And when I say turn a blind eye, it's like I mean, you become rich without really noticing how you've done it.
Yeah, I see what you mean. You're not looking at the sort of methodology to be rich. Of course, that's why a lot of people that are young get ripped off too.
It's absolutely
because they don't notice the kind of sharks that can rip them off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I always consider myself very, very lucky, because I think I've managed to become wealthy without having to walk on other people. And there aren't that many industries where that can happen. At the same time, there is obviously a dichotomy about seeing a lot of the things that are going on around you that are wrong. I mean, for instance, there's a real dichotomy in the fact that I've stayed in my own country. I've stayed in my own country right up till now, and I've never left for the purposes of tax. There's a dichotomy to that. Maybe I would be better off getting out of the country, but what difference would it make? I'd only come here.
And then you'd be giving
exactly. It makes no difference whatsoever. I mean, they're becoming much the same entity, our government and your government, anyway.
It's an awkward position, but I think that it's valuable that you're at least concerned with it. You know, and I think it's valuable that, you know, without being too cliched, that artists are aware of the issues of being artists.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all of the issues, social issues, poetic, aesthetic issues. It's so I find it very. I saw Madonna, and I found it very difficult to just accept that role of the entertainer. Bowie, at least, he sort of understands the artifice of entertainers, so he plays with it, but with an intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
I don't say Madonna lacks intelligence, but her intelligence is all towards the goal of celebrity or the goal of success.
I would say that she, to me, I've always admired her direction and her total ability to turn every potential that she has into something. I mean, I've always like listened to Madonna records. I'm very disappointed in the last at least 12 months, because for a while there with Papa Don't Preach and Live to Tell, I really thought that she was going to turn her celebrity into something of some kind of musical progression, and she definitely seems to not really care anymore. I mean, the last I was disappointed enough with the rest of that album, but this whole soundtrack thing has just shocked me, because I think when you are in the position where people will buy almost anything you'll do, as long as it's of a commercial value, you can use that and really, you know, interest people at the same time. She has such strength now. She could go off on a tangent again and prove us all totally wrong, and decide that she does want to follow a much more investigative musical path, but I don't think she will.
You know as well as I that what's getting people so excited about you again is that you have consolidated the songwriting capabilities with this, at least with I Want Your Sex. The controversial elements that are involved, which hew themselves to a lot of your social views,
Mm-hmm.
and a very important musical statement. You've reinforced, I think, let's face it, the roots of the soul that you've drawn on. You've stepped away from the lightweight elements of the soul influences, and you've gotten into the heavyweight elements, from my point of view.
You think so?
Yeah. The funk.
Yeah, I think maybe you're right. I think there's I think it's probably a more successfully black sounding record than anything else that I've done, perhaps. But at the same time, I've always felt that I can follow that path, but the things that are really important on the album are not the funk records. The funk records are me doing what I want to do from the point of view of I spend an awful lot of my time listening to modern black music and dancing in clubs and stuff like that. So to me, that's my reflection of my life at the moment, or part of my life at the moment. In terms of the other stuff on the album, there's stuff on the album which will transcend anything that I could possibly do from that dance level. The stuff that I'm most pleased with on the album is the stuff which is very again it's black based, but it's much more taking my potential as a songwriter further than it's gone before.
Well, since I don't know what's on the, maybe you should tell me a little bit about it, as we get into this whole conversation.
One of the reasons for making sure that, let's say, the more funk orientated stuff went on this album and was part of the new career was because I knew that, I mean, I feel very strongly that that if I had just made an album of ballads or of say more mature stuff, if I'd done that and gone the whole hog and tried to show everybody how I was a mature artist and everything, I think a lot of the people of my own age and a bit younger would have actually ignored some of the stuff on the album which they'll now get to hear and really like. There are certain things on the album which I know would have been pushed aside were they part of a more MOR type sounding album, but because they are black influenced, they fit very nicely in an album which does have some funk stuff on it, and I know that more people that should hear them will hear them and accept them. So I mean, I'm pleased with it on that level, but it's very difficult to see how it's going to be taken because it's not anything that people will be expecting, really.
It's not sort of a frothy kind of up beat.
No, it's not really. It's not. I mean, it's a kind of strange kind of mix of influences on the whole album, but I think it kind of gels together.
What really makes you mad? What really provokes you?
Intolerance of any kind, or blind and kind of blinkered ignorance really makes me mad in people. But intolerance and abuse of position, I think. Intolerance, whether it be racism, sexism. There are kind of, the kind of things that make me mad are normally that, you know. But my degree of getting mad is not a violent one, really.
Do you sort of one thing I was thinking about was also this star role and the problems with it. I'm always intrigued with how people negotiate it, because you seem to handle it pretty well. But I remember you were talking about in one of the interviews about wanting to be able to walk into places and not deal with it. I think this move that you've made to back off from Wham is giving you a chance to give you a breather.
I had got to this situation where Wham was really too much for me.
How so?
Well, simply because, apart from anything else, I still live in a country where we are the most successful. I mean, I've been chased around by the gutter press in my own country for about 3 years now, non-stop. And there was...
That must really piss you off.
It's just, it's very difficult because I want to stay in the country. I love my country, but I really find it hard to deal with day-to-day level of scrutiny.
You seem like the kind of guy that people get along with. Can you be a real pisser sometimes? Can you piss people off?
I'm sure I can. I think I do. If I do, it's normally in work situations, because work situations are the only point at which my desire for things to be right is stronger than my desire to keep everybody sweet. You know, I'm very much a peacemaker, and I'm very much I'm the type of person who really, I probably try a lot harder than when I was younger to be good to people, to be nice to people, because I mean, I've always been the type of person who works very hard at keeping relationships, and it's meant that I have very close friends around me that I've always had. You know,
Who are your closest friends?
My closest friends, a guy called David Austin, who I've known, the guy that I did the song with. Yeah, that I grew up with. My cousin, who was one of the people in there, who's in there with his girlfriend. He's the other closest friend, I guess. And then Andrew. I don't see Andrew as much as I used to because he's living in France.
Do you think you two will ever work together again?
Yeah, very probably actually. I'm sure we will.
Coming up?
No, there's nothing we're actually working on at the moment, but I'm sure something will come up. I suppose they're my close friends, and of course Kathy. Well, Kathy's it's 2 years, but it's...
Have you learned a lot about Chinese culture through her? Does she speak Chinese?
No, she doesn't speak Chinese, and her parents are... She's third generation, I guess.
Do you find all the controversy over this record shocking?
I mean, there's no doubt in my mind if it had all happened 5 years ago, it wouldn't have happened.
Do you think you compromised yourself putting in the line about monogamy and all that as a gesture? Or some people think...
I don't think it was a compromise because I genuinely believe in it. I think it's something that I wouldn't have done a year ago, for sure, because I wouldn't have felt it particularly necessary. But I genuinely... It's not the hypocrisy because it's genuinely what I believe. I mean, I've had my promiscuous time, and it really wasn't something that I felt. I don't feel, having done it, that it's something that was really necessary, and I learnt from it, etc., etc., etc. I just think that had I found the right relationships earlier, I would have been happier earlier, you know. And a
lot of people are like looking at that song with regard to AIDS, and it must raise your hackles a little bit, either to be put on either one side or the other of the...
It does really. I feel like the statement, it's a shame I had to make the statement, although I understand why I had to make the statement, but I felt that the song was so much less damaging on a subliminal level than most of the other things that I hear in America,
right,
especially with regard to heavy metal. And it was so much more to do with a person as opposed to a sexual object. In terms of, you know, just the song. I mean, you only have to look at the stuff on MTV, and that is where things are fucked up here, you know.
Have you ever had any feminist reaction to that song?
None whatsoever, no. I had one woman saying, why is it Kathy that's trying on the wigs? So I just said, well, because I look fucking stupid in a wig, and she looks great, you know. But no, I've not had any real feminist reaction. I've always had kind of... everyone's always got me wrong when I try to do anything like that. I mean, when we did Wham Rap, we were trying to parody the idea. We were trying to say, look, the doll is shit. We were also trying to say that people, just because you haven't got a job doesn't mean you're shit. But the doll is shit, you know. So that was weird, and then people took us totally seriously. Although there were lots of elements that were tongue-in-cheek, was taken seriously. Then we tried to do a parody on sexism, and Young Guns was the guy who was rapping in Young Guns was supposed to be a real arsehole, and everyone just thought that was what I was supposed to be. Everyone just thought that was me, you know. The whole point of it was the guy was a jerk and making out that, you know, that girls were shit and were good for fucking and getting married to, but at the moment, you know, what were you doing wasting your time with this girl and everything? It was all, again, and then I got all this sexist crap back. So I'm totally used to people misinterpreting me. I'm just not used to it being so on such a large scale. What I'm saying is I'm totally used to being misinterpreted on the level lyrically. In terms of the whole gay thing, I'm totally used to that. It's been going on for everyone was saying, firstly they said that I was with Andrew, the only reason Andrew was there is because he was my boyfriend, which was just like a laugh from day one. They've tried to link me with my cousin. They've tried to link me with David. They've done the whole bit. I mean, I don't really care. I've never really cared about that. I've always, apart from anything else, there are so many examples in rock history where it's really not done anybody any harm at all. That kind of rumour, what difference does it make?
Well, if you were gay, would you be open about it? Or would you hide it like some people try to do?
Apart from anything else, I don't think anybody's sexuality should get in the way of their talent, you know, which it does these days. If I turn around tomorrow and said I'm gay, and everyone that was saying it for the last 5 years has been right all along, I mean, there's no doubt it would have a huge effect on my career, whereas maybe in the 70s it wouldn't have done. But regardless of that, whether it's 70s or 80s, I just think it's pathetic that someone's sexuality should make any difference to the way their music is perceived.
With a song like "I Want Your Sex," I mean, I think it makes, you know, you're making a statement about your own sexuality. You think?
The song itself, I don't think makes any statement at all. I think I've always left sexual statements about my own sexuality anyway, out of my lyrics. People interpret them whatever way they like. You know, I mean, I must admit I like playing with that. and it's a kind of perverse thing to do, I suppose.
That's where your real perverseness comes.
Yeah, I think that's it. But
you are definitely a sincere guy, and I accept that you put the thing about monogamy in the record as I mean, not in the record, in the video, as something you genuinely believed. But I wondered, I'm just a little worried that just judging by who you are, that you might not have given people the impression that you were playing it a little safe at a time when you were doing a really important, controversial thing, saying sexuality is good, sex is good, music and sex is good sex music is good, not heavy metal sex music, but good, healthy, funk.
I do really genuinely believe, I think sex and the idea of lust, you know, that kind of idea of real lust, and the idea of relationships and everything have been incredibly pulled apart from each other. And I really like the idea of doing something which was about your relationship, but making it that you really love someone, but you really want to fuck them as well, and you can't, you know, that you're not getting the opportunity, you know, but that kind of lust. Do you know what I mean? Because it's all part of something really, really good. At the same time, I did realise that the message that most people would get from the record was not that.
Think you'll get married?
I think I'll get married. I think I'll get married if and when I decide I want a child, you know, because I don't see much point in it otherwise. Especially, I don't understand why anybody gets married over here. I mean, with the success and failure rate you have over here. Without the idea, I think children. I think the only real reason for getting married is for children, simply because as a child, I think children, more than anything, the thing that creates a well-balanced person is a well-balanced background, and whether or not your mother and father care that they're married, as a child you definitely care. If I went around to other people's houses and mum and dad were screaming, or even if mum and dad were screaming at the kids, I used to come home. I couldn't quite handle it. I had a very, very stable background with there was very little aggression in it, you know.
I'm intrigued about, you know, where George Michael will be 25 years from now with this sort of teen pop thing.
I don't know where I'll be in 5 years' time. I mean, the last 5 years has moved so quickly. And musically, I'm in areas now where I would never have believed even 2 or 3 years ago that I'd want to be.
Well,
so,
Jesus, a 17-year-old kid, and you're doing the kind of things you're doing. I mean, I'm surprised you've kept any kind of head. How did you avoid doing lots of drugs and alcohol and getting fucked up and messed up?
There's one level on which I'm the same as probably every big star there's ever been. And that's that I wanted to be a star because I wanted to make up for whatever weaknesses I felt I had as a person, you know. Whatever reservations I had about myself before I came into the business, I didn't want to become someone else. I was, you know, fairly happy with myself anyway. Not in a kind of narcissistic way, just in the sense that I was comfortable, you know. And I think probably because of that, I haven't necessarily gone through the trauma that a lot of stars have gone through in trying to establish just who else it is they want to be, you know.
Prince is an interesting character. I mean, I kind of get pissed off that he doesn't do interviews. I just think there's a certain megalomania and paranoia there that really tells me something about a star. If you can't, or he seems to.
I think it's the biggest, the most impressive thing about Prince's career is that at the beginning, when nobody wanted to know anything about him, he wouldn't do interviews. How can you make that is the most confident statement you can possibly make.
Yes, you're right.
Because then no one can turn around and say, wow, he's too big to do interviews now. Because he never had that press backlash because he never talked to them in the first place.
True.
I mean, it's the cleverest thing I've ever seen a star do, is from day one to say, right, I know. I mean, this is when he was not even necessarily making brilliant albums or anything, because I don't think that the early stuff really showed the potential.
See, now, but on the other hand, I think what you have things to say that I think people should hear that you just can't say in a song because it's a different medium.
But should people necessarily hear them? It's a necessity in the business that you do these things, because if you don't do them, everyone gets fucked off with you. So you have to do them. I mean, I would perfectly honestly, to be really honest with you, if I could be a star just by making records, I didn't have to make videos and I didn't have to do interviews, I would be in heaven.
Would you tour?
I'd tour, yeah. I mean, that's the two things. Making records, I love writing and making records, and I love touring. Well, I don't love touring, but I love playing live. I hate having my picture taken. I hate making videos. I don't mind interviews because they're generally quite intelligent these days.
You're an articulate guy. You enjoy talking.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily think that I don't think my talking. I don't think anything that I can say can possibly enrich people's appreciation of what I do.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it should do.
Oh, I don't know. You know, like there's two arguments there. You know, there's the Arcturus theory, and then there's, you know, that you know something about the creator and where he's coming from and all the issues that he brings into it, and that's all part of the whole. Of the
I think,
context.
but it's not. But when it comes down to it, when it really comes down to it, and a record should be like a painting. A record should be like anything that you can take totally out of context and place in another context. It has to stand up for itself, I think.
I don't know. This is the
I think it's
debate.
different with art. I think with visuals, I think it can be different. I think with art, it's different. Somehow with music, I think it just a character. Although it's all part of being a star, a character.
But you
My
have to feel
personality
the
can really confuse the issue with. I don't know. In some cases, I think you're right. I think in the case of in some cases, I think you're right. I think in terms of the type of music I make, I don't think it really adds anything.
I mean, but
You know?
no. Those songs are very personally felt, and I think when people know that they just having the knowledge, the sense of the knowledge that you are really there's you there beyond just you there as a
Yeah, I
role.
suppose you're right.
I think there's a power to that.
I love the power in
There's
the
a power
fascination
to
of silence, though. I love that. I mean, if I was put it this way, if I was starting again, if I knew that I'd be making the records I was making now and I'd be having the success I was having now 6 years ago, and I could have decided whether or not to do interviews from day one, I would definitely have said no.
No, I think you make well.
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, having said that, whenever I do interviews these days, it's been very helpful to me because it's kind of my interviews have been probably the opposite of what you were saying. You know, talking about reconstructing the myth. My interviews have been pretty much about demolishing the myth for the last couple of years. You know, because the myth was that. I mean, make no mistake. I am very proud of the pop records I made, the ones which had nothing really to do with my personality at all. They had something to do with it. I mean, Go-Go was not really a reflection of my personality. Go-Go was a reflection of my craft.
Things you loved, Motown.
Yeah, and
But that's a part of you.
it's a part of me, yes. But the thing is, what I did was I built this group and this group sound, which was really only a hint of what I am, but I didn't necessarily want people to know what I was at the time, and I was just very much enjoying my craft. What I've had to spend the last 3 years doing is trying to convince people that just because I made music which was I don't think necessarily disposable, because I think it was a lot stronger than a lot of the pop records were about at the time, and I think some of those Wham records will be remembered for a lot longer. But it was just because it was lightweight. I'm having to. I've been spent the last 3 years trying to convince people I'm not brain dead, you know, and it's like, it's good that it's good that it works. It's good that it works, and it's good that talking to people in interviews shows that there is something else there. I just feel sad that you have to do it. You can't just put out the records and say, but look, it's okay, you hated Go-Go. Go-Go is part of me, I'm proud of it. This record is part of me and I'm proud of it. I know you'll like this one because I can tell the type of person you are, but, you know, just because I did that doesn't mean you shouldn't like this. It's just such a shame that you have to go through the whole process of convincing people on the level of as a person, because I'm in that sense I'm a purist. I think if you present people with 4 minutes of music which really it should hit, if the material is there, if the words and the music are there to hit them there, it should hit them there. Who gives a fuck who made it, you know? That's the way I feel. That's really way I feel about pop music.
When you write, do you write from a melody first?
I arrange everything in my head, and I mean, some things have stayed in my head for like 2 years, the whole complete arrangements and stuff, because I just don't like to commit things to tape too early. But I used to write melody and then the lyric would come, and they tend to come simultaneously now.
What did you write it on?
What did I write
Guitar,
what
or did
on?
you sing it into a tape, or
No, I'll just do it up here.
do it up there?
All up there, yeah. And I mean, I used to sing into a Walkman, and then I decided that was a cheap way, because I've always thought that if if an idea comes into my head, it should ring a little bell when I know it's a good one, and then I'll repeat it into myself again and again and again in my head, again and again, and then it stays. And if I lose it, then it wasn't worth having.
How much of
So,
this record is like really you? Are there stories there that are being told about you, personal?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the things that are on the album are pretty intensely personal. They're not as depressing as some of the other things I've written have been, because I'm not
You've
as
written
depressed as I
about
was.
breakup. I mean, but when you're in a position of strength as a star, does breakup affect you as much as?
Just the same way. I mean, one of the things that people don't appreciate about relationships and stardom is that it's far harder to accept the downfalls in your personal life when you have so many people who want to be part of your personal life, or when you have people that really think that you must have it totally sussed, you know, because because it's everyone's image of you is, and in my case, maybe more so than others, but everyone's image of me is very successful and sexual, and it's all kind of all these big things, you know, and that's just not the way life washes, you know, and sometimes it's very hard to keep that in the back of your mind when things are going wrong personally, because you feel like a fool somehow.
Are there specific moments? Well, let's talk about this record. There's specific moments in this record that I don't know. I know what I'm saying. I don't want to say you hold precious, but are that really special that I'd like to get inside. Tell Brad wants that inside.
The most special thing on the album, I think, is probably the thing that will be the most remembered thing off of it.
Which is?
Which is a ballad called "One More Try," which is the best vocal performance I've ever done, without any doubt, any shadow of doubt. I mean, it was.
What did it for you?
It was a moment I was writing about where I was on the way into the relationship I'm in now, and it was that point where you've been really had your guts ripped out by someone.
Someone you'd gone out with before?
Yeah, and you're on the point of, and you can just see something, you get that deja vu feeling when you're just about to make a real commitment and decide to go for it.
And then you flash on the past.
And you flash on the past. And at the time, I wasn't just flashing on the past, I was still choking on the past, you know, and it was like, I just wasn't sure if I was ready to do it again.
Is this a big, important point to play all the material? And
Not really, I just play most of the material because, well, it's very difficult for me because I write a lot in the studio, and so it's very difficult to keep people hanging around for ages and ages. And also, I just tend to find that, especially if you're going for a particular feel on a record, more often than not, if you can actually play it yourself, if it's a very simple structure, if you can play it yourself, if you're going for a particular feel, you can often dilute it when you use session guys. And in the case of the last track that you heard, Hand to Mouth, that's just well, I played everything on that, but obviously I can't play the acoustic guitar, classical guitar well enough to play that stuff, so I got someone in at the end. But I tend to bring session musicians in only when I have to, and if I can play it myself, I do.
Well, there's a grandeur to the whole record, a grandeur. That first song, "The Faith," I mean, that's really it's an up-tempo tune, but it like has a grandeur, and I don't think it's well, like I said.
What do you mean by grandeur, really?
A richness,
Mm-hmm.
a harmonic richness, an instrumental richness, and yet a pure sense. It's not. It's simple, but it was great. It was that first song is real great in its.
Well, I think the simplicity. If something is arranged, if rhythmically and musically, or rhythmically and harmony-wise, if it's arranged to be spot on in every area, then it needs very little. You know, it's just a matter of less is more, as long as it's all arranged properly.
Well, that says something there interesting that you call it faith. There's faith in that, and why faith?
Just because I think I have a renewed optimism that I lost during the last couple of years of Wham that I've got back, just in things in general, in my own life, as I say, not necessarily about life in general and about the larger issues, but in terms of my own life, I'm much more optimistic than I
Sound
was.
like a man in love.
Well, it has been said.
What's the title of the one? The one about New York.
That's
That
cool.
has a real touching.
I'm not sure what I'll call that yet. I'm really not sure what I'll
Well,
call
what's
that
what's that one riff? The chant that's in there.
yet. The Crazy Man dance thing.
Yeah,
which bit?
there's something there for a song title, but
There's. I mean, I'm really not sure what I'll call that. I'm not totally sure it'll go on the album yet, depending on the stuff that I have
Really?
to finish. Yeah.
that's a great dance track.
Yeah, everyone seems to like it. So
That's
it
a
probably
great
will.
track. But no, you know what's great about it is that it clearly says, I as a songwriter don't only write pretty melodies
Mhm.
and beautifulnesses. I also have a kind of tension or passion. Like you
Mhm.
said, you like the doomy.
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of the most. I think it's probably the most kind of dark thing I've done. So that'll probably. Yeah, that's probably a good point. Yeah.
You got one vote for it from me. I
Okay.
actually, of all the things that I've heard, including "I Want Your Sex," I think there's so much potential to that song. By the way.
Mhm.
I'm putting it on, but making my statement here now.
Okay.
But this is a very American record, you know.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Very American.
Oh, you mean in general that
In
particular
general.
one?
No, the whole record is very American.
It is quite. I suppose it's a lot of it. I mean, well, to be fair, a lot of the influences have always been American, but I think probably because I've spent more time here, it's more authentically American than
And
maybe some of the other
integrated.
stuff. Yeah.
I must tell you, I really like. I also like that jazzy quality of the. What's the title again?
Hand to mouth.
Hand to Mouth. I want to hear an instrumental track. It's almost like new agey in a good sense,
Mhm.
not in a bad sense.
Mhm.
In that there's a very evocative, dreamy quality. I mean, I think that's a great way to treat the subject that you treated.
Uh huh.
And
Well, I think it's like I said, there's a lot of people doing it with a very angry, feel. And I'm not.
Stance.
If I was an angry person, it would be perfectly fine to do that. I think it would be quite pretentious of me to pretend to be an angry person because I have concerns about things, but I'm hardly in a position to be angry. You know.
do you find it difficult though when you have people sort of grasping, very grasping towards you? I mean, that inevitably comes from. Well, yes, you do find it difficult from stardom, especially people that you can't really. You want to sort of. Sometimes I see when girls come up to guys, that there's stars or fans, and there's some one part of me that says, I want to slap them and say, "Come on, get your head straight. This is a real guy. Just talk to him."
Mhm.
And I could just see for you, it's even.
Well, it's very difficult for me because I'm very far too, to a degree, I'm far too polite, and I have real difficulty in being aggressive to people unless they really deserve it. I mean, when they deserve it, I can really give it to them, but most people don't deserve it just by being excited or by being. They don't realise that they're the 50th person that's bugged you during your meal, And people don't think. People do things without thinking. When people do things without thinking, it's one thing, and I find it very hard to be aggressive to them. So, and as most people do things without thinking, I find I spend a lot of my time being polite and trying to get rid of people politely, which can be a real bummer, if you're out for the evening. But then again, you get people who know what they're doing, and they come over and try and be deliberately unimpressed and stuff, and then they really get the bad end of me. But they're far and few between.
What's been your most embarrassing situation? Just in general, but it makes me think of it with regard to the stardom issue.
Most embarrassing
Yeah,
situation.
you ever been in a really, even without it being part of. Oh, see, you've always George Michael, 17 years old. It's like you almost haven't been away from this whole thing.
I never really had any other experience. No, I mean I didn't really. I went from school to this within about 8 months. Not to this. I mean to some medium degree of success. And in other words, people wanted something other than me from me. For as long as I can remember, so that is something that I've learned to live with, and I don't know. It's a real pain in the arse, but it's you learn to sort out the wheat from the chaff, as it were.
Have you, Duran Duran's another band that I've talked to that's gone through that sort of experience. Have you ever found you've been able to get closer to people because you come from this and other people in other bands, or do you find there's a lot of distance it makes for you and other people that are other musicians or?
To tell you the truth, I don't really make. I mean, I've got musician friends, obviously, but I find that, but I don't really have that much in common with most of the musicians that I meet anyway. I'm very much outside of my professional life. I'm not very attached to the music business at all, really.
Tell me some news. What can I report here? Some
News?
groundbreaking news, something with the tour or anything newsy I can. I mean, I got John to bring Renee. What could I? Anything I can say? Tell.
The one thing there's this. If the idea, I can't tell you what it is, but if the idea for the tour comes off, if the set for the tour could be really something people have never seen before, which would be great. I've got some great ideas for the tour, but there's nothing really.
Are you going to do any interesting videos? Any new weird directors? Get Stanley Kubrick to do it?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think he'd do it anyhow. But you get my point.
Well, Fellini's doing a few on the next album. Who was it said they'd actually asked Fellini? Oh, that's it. Pete Wiley wrote to Fellini and asked him to do a movie, and asked him to do the video, and he said that he'd be available. He was interested, but it would have to be in 18 months' time, which I thought was really funny, considering the single was out 3 weeks from then. It gave some impression of how much Fellini knows about the music industry, which is just as well.
But getting back to, I want to tell me a little bit about why you did that song about New York.
The last time I was in New York, I noticed, because I don't go there very often. I only go when I have to. Really, I go there for work. I don't go there for pleasure. And it just dawned on me what a huge number of homeless and really loony people there are in New York. Just everywhere you look. I mean, okay, so Central Park is not the most is fairly obvious place to find crazy people, but it just became suddenly apparent that everywhere you look there was another person with something really strange about them, and it just made me think about how many people must come to New York, and they come normal, they arrive normal, and what happens to them. And it was just basically about the idea of people who come there thinking that they are going to make it, or not necessarily they're going to make it, but they're going to make something out of themselves, and are gradually driven into the ground.
Look at Mayor Koch.
This is true.
Well, maybe also you haven't spent time in New York without the star position, being in the star position. If you could just get a flat in the East Village and hang out and
Oh, I'm not saying that that's the only thing about New York. I just think it's more apparent there than anywhere else I've ever seen. And it's the type of place, because it's so hugely competitive, that you can understand why people go crazy so quickly.
What more should I know about the record before we close up shop here?
What more should you know about the record?
Anything else I should know? I think it's only fair. You have your moment here.
Well, what you should know about the record, let me see. This will be the first album I've ever released where I just released the album and then take singles off it, because they've always come out first before now. You could say, the one thing about this album I think you could say is that I think I could honestly say I'm going to milk this album for everything. In other words, they're going to be I think there'll be 6 singles off of it once it's released, but I genuinely think that all of them are going to be singles, because I couldn't bear them just to be album tracks. Not because I want this album to, just keep going. Obviously I do, but I think I think there are 3 really strong slow tracks on it, and 3 really strong dance tracks on it, and that's why I think it's justifiable.
Finally, well, what's the future? We were talking about the future. You don't know what's going to happen, but is there anything in the future that you've thought about or considered, or that I don't know how to pose the question exactly, but I'm just sort of curious about the future for you.
All I know is that the only goal I have really, outside of the obvious goal, which is to keep making better and better music, which is what I want to do, and obviously the thing that terrifies any artist is the day when they wake up and they're bored with whatever they could do next, and I know that's a long way off, but the only tangible goal I have over the next 2 years is to become as big in America as I am in the rest of the world as an artist. And I don't know why, because as a star I don't want to be any bigger, but in terms of as a musician, I want to know that everybody knows my stuff.
Have you ever thought of just getting out of this business altogether? I mean, not playing music.
I thought about that seriously a little while back. Well, that was only when as I said, when I felt trapped. But then a swift, I needed a swift slap.
Who slapped you?
I don't know. I did really. It just it's like a cloud that lifted, and I just thought you've worked to get yourself in this position, and I actually love what I do, and I forgot about that for a while.
You got to become a talk show host.
Oh yeah.
That's the next step.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know.
I don't think that's for me actually.
No, you're a pretty good talker.
Yeah, but I don't know if I'm a good question asker. And anyway, you have to ask shit questions. You have to pry. Being a talk show host, and I don't like prying.
You ever thought of writing? Writing. I mean, art, magazine, or books. Find more and more
it's a
musicians.
possibility. It's a possibility because I mean, music was all. I mean, English was always my real strongest point at school. My vocabulary and I mean, everybody always used to push me towards journalism, which I never really wanted. But I think I'd write quite well. But I think the actual idea of, again, a novel is such as it's like, to me, a novel would be even more daunting than the idea of one concept for an album, because it's taking a train of thought and making it last and making it last in an interesting fashion over a long period. Whereas with a 3 or 5 minute song, you only have a certain amount of time, and then you can totally wipe that away and be fresh to something else.
How did you avoid drug? You seem to be pretty drug free.
You don't know that sitting there. How do you know? No, it's as I said. You know, it's just something that.
Well, you seem like a healthy.
It's either. I mean, you use drugs for experimentation, or you use it for escape. I'm not saying that I've never needed either of those. I've never needed either enough to get me into any kind of
Get
serious
yourself fucked
trouble.
up.
Yeah.
Well, no, you were not the kind of guy who would make a statement of being anti-drugs unless you.
Uh-huh.
You know, you're not going to be like.
I'm not. I wouldn't say I was anti-drugs either. I would say I was definitely
anti-bad drugs, heroin and.
I'm anti certain drugs, and I'm anti. I think they're incredibly destructive thing for most people, because most people only have a certain amount of perspective. There are some people that I've seen handle drugs perfectly well to a minimal degree, and
just because they kept the moderation.
The moderation in anything can be, but at the same time, you know, you take far more risks. The risks to your nervous system with drugs are far more than the risks to your body in any sense with moderate. I mean, put it this way: if you were going to talk about moderate alcohol or moderate drugs, you should be going for moderate alcohol.
Right.
You know, I don't condemn people for many things. I wouldn't condemn people for taking drugs because I think it's your own decision. I would condemn encouraging anybody to take drugs, because most people can't handle it. Simple as that.
They're not prepared. And one last little thing, just I want to know: do you do things to keep yourself healthy? You seem to be pretty together.
No, I don't really. I don't eat particularly well. No, I've given up smoking. I smoked quite heavily last year, and then I gave up. I don't do any particular fitness exercises. I play tennis a bit.
Is there anything that influences you beyond your musical influences? What things, like books, films, and like what's your just
films do a little, but
what's
not very
your like
much.
an ideal, like a dream state? If you had a dream state or an ideal image, like this is very nice. This is really incredibly like at rest. Although there's times I have that sort of Zen Buddhist monastery. There's like my moments of certain things. What things are there for you?
I don't really have moments of extreme calm where I feel, you know, an ideal state. Ideal state. Two places I have my ideal state. I think one's in bed with the person of my choice, and two is on stage. I suppose because then you're the person of their choice. You know, they've forked out their money, but they're the two moments where I feel something spiritual, I suppose. Because I'm not a particularly spiritual person. I'm probably more spiritual than I was when I was younger, but I feel something really strongly spiritual on stage, and
An ecstasy.
well, it's just an energy which I can't fathom how that much energy can be transmitted between me and however many thousand people. It's the most enviable thing about being a pop star, is that exchange of energy between thousands of people and one person. And it's the closest I ever come to thinking, Jesus, I'm just a channel for something. You know, nothing can explain that to me. You know, how it can be that successful, that exchange of energy can be that complete, and I mean,
And total.
total, absolutely total, yeah.